You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network. For more quality options programs, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app, available in iTunes and on Google Play. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.
And now, it's time for the show that breaks down the options market. From unusual activity alerts to market analysis, strategy overviews, listener questions, and much more. If it involves puts and calls, then our all-star panel will break it down. It's time to hit the option block with your host, Mark Longo from the Options Insider Media Group, and co-hosts Uncle Mike Tussaw from RCM Asset Management, Andrew the Rock Lobster Giovinazzi from OptionPit.com, and Mark the Greasy Meatball Sebastian from OptionPit.com. And now, get ready to hit the option block.
All right, everybody. Welcome back to the Monday Palooza of Awesome. That is the option block. My name is Mark Longo from the OptionsInsider.com, as well as, of course, from the ever-exciting Options Insider Radio Network. You know what? It's not just a Monday Palooza of Awesome. We have a double Palooza because we come at you twice a week, Monday and Thursday, 3 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Eastern. Join us live if you're hardcore, if you want the awesomeness in your veins directly as it's produced, then come join us live, kick the tires, and light the fires, as they say. You can always ask questions, have fun, live tweet, react, join the polls, all that fun stuff that we do live during the show. If you guys can't join us live, I know a lot of you can't. I know most of you, quite frankly, are out there living lives, having jobs, doing things that would prevent you from tuning in live. We understand. We know most of you listen on demand anyway. We like you guys too. But even though if you ask questions, we do tend to give a little bit of a premium, little extra juice to the live folks. So if you ask live ones or during the show time, we tend to percolate those up to the surface, even though we get a lot of good ones from you on-demand listeners too. Of course, you can always find all the good stuff. If you are listening to this show, I assume you know how to find it by now, but maybe some of you are still listening to just the Option Block feed. If so, go ahead and upgrade yourselves, upgrade your lives to the full network feed. Get all the shows, Daily News Rundown, get Vol Views on Friday. We're going to talk about some VIX today. I got a feeling you may like talking a little bit of VIX. That show is all about VIX, a whole hour talking VIX. So check that out if you haven't done so already. Advisors option, TWIFO for all the commodity stuff you may be intrigued in. I know a lot of you are interested in gold and crude and all that fun stuff. Talk that stuff as well. Tech, you name it. It's all there on the network. We like to break it down and bring it to you. Easiest way to get it all, of course, the network feed. Check it out. And however you listen, live, after the fact, whatever it is, hit us up. Questions, comments, insights, pearls of wisdom. We love it all here on the old option block. And joining me today, let's get into him before he leaves the cozy environs of St. Charles. So starting off with the man who's usually in St. Charles, but he's in transit today. Still joining us, though, good old Uncle Mike Tussaw from RCM Wealth Advisors, beaming in from parts unknown. Have you crossed the mythical threshold of St. Charles yet, sir?
No, I need my intro to be in the great metropolis of St. Charles, so that way it makes for good programming.
It is indeed good programming if you're still in St. Charles. Otherwise, the whole bit just kind of falls apart. If you're somewhere else, if you're outside the paradise on earth, the weather shield that is St. Charles, then it all just falls apart. And joining us from well outside the weather shield, some may call it paradise on earth. I ran into someone who said he was jet skiing up in the Rock Lobster's neck of the woods a couple weeks ago and said it was pretty nice. So who knows? I'm hearing secondhand all sorts of things about the Rock Lobster compound. Let's beam him in and see for ourselves. Mr. Rock Lobster, a.k.a. Andrew Giovinazzi from the OP, OptionPit.com. Mr. Giovinazzi, welcome back to the program. How's that for a lead-in?
That's huge. Did you see my man Joe? Was he running around Chicago?
He was floating around the myriad events that were in Chicago last week. It was about 7 events all on one day because they were all very well planned.
I was about to say, if anybody can make them all, it would be Joe. He has the ability to be in multiple places at the same time. I don't know how he does it, frankly. It boggles my mind.
Yes, I was in multiple places. He was. We kept bumping into each other. Such is the way here in the options mecca That is Chicago. All right, with the gang assembled, let's do it. Let's dive right on into the trading block.
It's time to break down the latest topics, trades, and trends in the world of options. It's time for the trading block.
All right, everybody, let's break it down. Time for the trading block, the portion of the show where we break down, surprise, surprise, what the heck was trading today. An interesting day. Most of the markets kind of feeling out, kind of picking their range a little bit. Most of them pretty tight for the better part of the day, and S&P up fractionally, up less than 0.25%. Dow up slightly more, almost a third of a percentage point there. The Q is pretty much unched slightly off on the day, and all this kind of hither and yon has VIX cash kind of scratching his head a little bit as well, saying, what the heck am I going to get up to today? Is my weekend going to come back in? Are they going to take more out? What's going to happen? As a result, we saw a little bit kind of almost unched out there in VIX cash land as well, even though it did not prevent it intraday as it was experimenting, as it was finding itself, flirting, actually breaking back into the single-digit territory. 9.88 the low today over there on ye old VIX cash. I think that's pretty close to what I was wagering in the crystal ball. So if I have the option, I would like to just freeze VIX cash at that level for the rest of the week, and that would look pretty good. Right now, a little bit north of the 10 handle, about 10, 11 or so. So I'd like it to be a little bit south and then freeze for the rest of the week, and boy, then I am just spot on. But as we all know, a week is an eternity in the world of volatility. So all sorts of craziness can ensue and probably will between now and then. And by the end of the week, we'll probably be at 15, and then all this will look silly. But that said, let's kick things off. Let's see. Let's kick off with Uncle Mike before he breaks free of St. Charles, and who knows what happens to his internet. Uncle Mike, what caught your eye in today's activity, sir?
Well, 2,500, the big number on the S&P that I've been talking about for so long. We did technically close, I believe, 0.03 of a point or something like that above it on Friday, but we held it today. It went above it, and we're not quite at the highs of the day, but we did hold that number. I think it is interesting that the VIX did dip below 10 again, and curious to see where that goes and to hear the Rock Lobsters take on that in a couple minutes. The other thing that I noticed, silver got walloped today. So if you are looking to get into silver, if you believe it's an upward trend and you want to buy in on a dip, now might not be a bad time to take a look at that. A couple other things. Microsoft was up on the day today. We were able to, Friday was kind of a fun day for us with Microsoft and the triple income fund, in that we got out of our covered call for a nickel on expiration Friday. And then Microsoft proceeded to go up above our short strike of 74.5 on Friday. So we went into the weekend with no covered call on it. And then with Microsoft up again today, we kind of slipped one by the goalie with that, and in a good way. And always like to take every opportunity I possibly can to be an advocate for closing out short options at a nickel. And this is just one more example of why it can be a good thing. So I think there's a lot going on in some individual names. Overall, the market is kind of taking kind of a wait-and-see attitude, with the VIX being right on the 10 borderline. Trump is. We have the address to the UN for the market to digest and factor in that Trump's doing, because he's never done that before. And that's kind of my take on the market today.
Mr. Rock Lobster, when you're not out there busy jet skiing and just peeling and feeding yourself some fresh lobster straight from the sea, what else was catching your eye in today's activity, sir?
We had all kinds of premium in the VIX futures today. All kinds. And I think nobody knows quite what to do with it. We're trying to figure out if it's Trump premium or if it's Fed unwinding their balance sheet premium. But the VIX cash, 10 is fair when the market's only moving, the SPX was up 3 points today. That's only $3. It's nothing. So, when you look at it like that, it's like, oh my gosh. VIX should be there. However, one thing about, the VIX, the premium is in the futures, and that kind of tells all as far as that goes. What I think is, what's happening is traders now are letting option premium fall, but they're keeping the future premium is still staying a little bit with VIX, and that's where you see kind of the volatility. There's almost always volatility somewhere, and I think that's right now. That's where it is. So if you're a trader of options and premium, you're like that 10 VIX. Well, right now that 10 VIX, you have got to pay what 12. It's almost a 1270 October future right now. So you're, oh my gosh, actually today they crushed it, just because I realized that VXX and UVXY were down pretty big. But yeah, they took a lot of that October premium out as a subject that we had actually last week at Option Pit, just because, all of the vol products are all moving to the October cycle. And last week there was like 270 or 280 in premium in October. And we thought that was a lot. Put on a bought some UVXY puts and stuff like that inside our chat room, which worked out great, because it just there's every part of the vol products where they have kind of a more accelerated move than normal, only just because they're on one future. So we're getting to that point in the cycle. But anyway, enough of that. I'm not going to call it technical analysis, but analysis of technical factors or whatever. My other thing I'll say is NVIDIA. Oh my word. That stock is on a tear. We looked at that again last week for people in our chat room. Just very, very inexpensive volatility to purchase for the kind of movement that the underlying has. So NVIDIA, is that the new Apple? I don't know. But it feels like it's taking kind of the place of Google, not in so much as that, they're obviously Google's a giant company and all that, but kind of as kind of that other tech leader. Amazon was for a while sort of stuck around 1,000. Google, as it trades like this where it has those periods of that big move up, and right now it's just kind of doing nothing. And all the little techies are looking for something else to put their money in, and right now it's NVIDIA. I mean, what was it? 2 earnings cycles ago, it was $100, and now it's $187. So I guess everybody in the world will own products that have NVIDIA chips in them, or own multiple products that NVIDIA has chips in. I guess, the Chinese doing, auto driving, solar cars or something will all be running on NVIDIA, Anyway, so that's as far as the market goes. But premium-wise, they're still, I would say, probably a little bit above normal premium in the futures. And I think it's there for, it's either the Donald Trump premium, it's the Fed unwinding their balance sheet premium, and nobody's quite sure how this is all going to work out.
No one else is sure what the heck that noise was. That was just me researching some NVIDIA stuff. That's what I get for pulling up financial sites while we're doing the show. I should know better. They all play pre-roll as soon as you bring them up, and crazy loud. But yes, looking at NVIDIA, interesting stuff. Very active today, you're right. Looks like, I think it was Merrill Lynch, one of the houses, giving them a nice upgrade, saying, hey, they're apparently the future of all the chips that are going to go into AI. We heard a lot from mobile with NVIDIA for quite some time, but now, of course, NVIDIA up about over 4% today, nearly 7.5 handles, over 187.5 now out there for NVIDIA. So the rally ho mode keeps going. Printing it up on the options front as well. They're average about 160 a day today, doing nearly 400K out there today. So very, very active out there. NVIDIA land about almost 1.5 to 1 calls over puts. Not quite the bias you might think given the relatively aggressive upside move, 4%, but still just paper on every strike pretty much across the board in the weeklies and into the front months. Just a palooza. Yeah, it has been interesting to watch the trajectory of NVIDIA of late, the last couple of years or so, ever since we first started talking about it. A couple of years ago on the option block, because it was right after, I think it was right after the big Consumer Electronics Show, where it seems like the street kind of first collectively awakened and said, wait a minute, mobile's the future. These guys make chips for all these devices. Let's pile into this. And of course, they make all the graphical chips, so VR is involved in there, and kind of goes and snowballs from there. And here we are, a year and a half, 2 years later, and this thing just off to the races. A good year here. And a good trajectory so far here for NVIDIA. But let's flip that script a little bit, talking trajectory. A little bit of a worse trajectory. This is in good old Equifax, ticker symbol EFX. This bad boy, not looking too shabby today, up about 1.5%. But this thing's off about 35% or so since they first announced it. They pretty much gave away the keys to the kingdom for pretty much half of America. So all the good stuff, the really good stuff, like, mother's social, mother's maiden name, date of birth, all that good stuff that you can really use to do some damage. Not something like, your best friend's mom's name or maybe even your credit card number. Those things you can easily fix. No, they gave away the kind of keys to the kingdom. And so not surprisingly, they're getting slammed left, right, and center. Like I said, off 35%. Congressional investigations. Now it's coming out on the heels of this morning, the Justice Department getting in too, because there was some highlights about a week or so ago that some executives seemed like they had some well-timed trades closing out. They came out and said, this was just all well-timed stuff. Now it seems like that wasn't really planned ahead of time. And in one of those traders even slinging some options. We'll get to him in a little bit. But yeah, all this stuff, they first learned about the intrusion apparently back in July 29th. The first, we had one exec selling nearly $1 million worth of shares. Also saw another exec exercising his options and then cashing those out immediately for nearly $600,000 worth of stock. And then a day or so later, another selling about $250,000. So we're not talking enormous multi-million-dollar positions. Still, for these guys, it was pretty substantial. All of them keeping a lot of money in their pockets. As a result, like I said, 35% right off the top for all of that. So it's kind of interesting here how all of this has unfolded here. Nearly 2 million worth of shares. So interesting. Has this one, Mr. Rock Lobster, for all you hardcores out there in the pit chat, has this one come up on their radar? Obviously, vol has been moving up quite a bit out here as this thing took a nice downward move, and it has had some volume. Like we said, today, this name has been averaging about 7,000. Today alone doing 40,000. So this thing has been rocking and rolling of late. Is this one coming on your radar? And we'll get to your thoughts about the insider trading perhaps in a little bit. We have a question of the week about that exact topic. But has this one come up on the radar in the old hardcores, in the old pit chat?
It has. I have to give the credit to Mark. He was all over this early. I think he was buying 120 par put spreads early last week. He made huge money on this, and he rolled them down and kept. So I think he's flied off the balance of his stuff at this point. So, but yes, that's a subject, and at this point, who knows if it goes, how much lower it goes. I think they took quite a bit of it out. Just depends on what the fines and all the recriminations are going to be. I think today might be the first update in about a week on the thing. So yes, Mark was all over it early, and at least for now, it looks like the stink is off the stock for one day. But I think as it gets back in the news, we'll see what happens. But yeah, a lot of volatility. Even early in the week, the volatility in this thing, the stock was down. I don't know how much, and it was only like a 35 or 40 false options, and and then the stock proceeded to go down another $20, and then woohoo, we're finally in the 80s and 90s and the hundreds for option volatility. At least it was for a short period of time. It looks like they took a little bit of heat out of the vol today, so maybe they try to write. The thing is, how do you get all that information back, and who hacked it? There's
no getting it back. It's the genie's out of the bottle, baby. That stuff's gone. It's on the dark web, baby, being sold for pennies on the dollar. But still, in mass, it's worth a lot of money.
I figure somebody's got to be out there looking for who the seller is, because that would, it's kind of like trying to sell a $20 million diamond. I mean, there aren't too many buyers of it, and then people will kind of know who that is. So, wonder if they find who the hackers are, and this could be. Maybe a new James Bond episode. Who knows? The Equifax hackers.
There you go. Equifax hackers. I like it. Well, clearly they want to get a little perp walk involved in this thing. Maybe these guys who did some of this well-timed trading, shall we say, will be the ones who get to do the perp walk, regardless of whether that clearly wasn't related to the breach in terms of causing it. But still, maybe that's about the most they can do for blame. Certainly, a lot of people with their crosshairs on Equifax these days. The guys had one job and they failed at it pretty miserably. And I think we're all going to pay the price as a result. Enjoy freezing those accounts. Speaking of which, if you guys listening live, you can vote. You guys listening after the fact, you have pretty much the rest of the week to come in and vote. We asked you guys a question of the week here, and you guys are already chiming in with your thoughts. Right before the show, we asked you, hey, we got an exec out here cashing out his options worth about $584,000, right about a month before disclosing this massive breach over there in Equifax. The stock's off nearly 35% since then. What do you think? Well-timed, lucky, illegal, or are you busy freezing your accounts? Let us know. Vote if you're listening live. Vote everyone. Vote after the fact as well. We just won't be able to talk about your results until Thursday. So get in there. Already a lot of you guys coming in. Interesting to see how it's ranging. I'll let you guys take your own guesses. I'll let Mr. Uncle Mike and the Rock Lobster percolate their own thoughts as well as we keep on rolling into the Odd Block.
It's time to break down the most interesting, unusual, and downright questionable options activity that's been identified by theoptionsinsider.com. It's time for the Odd Block.
All right, everybody. That music means it's time for the Odd Block, the portion of the show where we get a little weird. We get a little odd, and we peer into the tea leaves that is the option block. Excuse me, the Odd Block. Laughing at the show chat here. You guys can't see that. That's just for us to enjoy during the show, separate from, of course, the live stream chat. Let's kick things off, as you guys always want us to do, in the land that just keeps on giving, apparently. This thing up was another over 2% day at one point for the Teslas. Ends up closing to the day actually almost about 385 even, only up a mere 1.4% or $5 and change out there. This thing, another day, another crazy upside rally. Oh, the strength of the hyperbole machine. That is Tesla. Far be it from me to naysay such a wealth-producing machine. That said, we got our crazy puts lighting it up yet again today. A little bit quieter than other sessions. Not quite the madhouse. Only a mere 131 of these Jan 2019 50 puts lighting it up here today. OI on that strike right around 29,000. Yet again, 28,988 to be precise. And we thought we'd break it down. By the way, we do this every day for you. If you don't want to do it for yourself, check out our Tesla options tracker. We tell you what the big trades are out there, the hot open interest positions, the big positions, all that fun stuff. I thought I looked at it today just to see what the big stuff was open out there in Tesla. And yes, still number one with the bullet. Nearly, not quite 2x, but let's say 1.5x or so, are the Jan 2019 50 puts. Followed right after it by the regular Jan. It's not quite as far out. 100 puts. So the Jan par puts, nearly 19,000 of those open out there. It's about 10,000 less than the Jan 2019 50 puts. Followed number 3 by the Jan, again regular Jan 50 puts. So 2 50 puts on the top 3. 2 of the top 3 open interest positions in Tesla are January 50 puts, just 1 year apart. Then number 4, the Jan 2019 par puts. You're starting to see a pattern. And number 5, rounding out the top 5, are the regular Jan 200 puts. So, Mr. Rock Lobster, what say you to that? All of the top 5 positions in Tesla right now, all of them are Jan puts, just give or take a year.
That surprises me not. You know what I think people do? I think they buy puts in stock, to be honest. I think that's what... that's the movie that we're seeing in Tesla. I think that would be the trade. Just buy puts in stock and kind of hang out and see what happens.
Doesn't surprise you that they're not a little bit closer to home?
You know, they probably were close to home about 4 months ago, or when they started buying because all these are all Jan 2018s, right? So they've been around for a year. And at the beginning of the year, what was Tesla? Everybody's like, oh, it's going to breach 200 and go back south. And I think that's probably why there's all that open interest down there, because I think somebody that might have bought Tesla at $45 and it's now 200, like, oh, I'm not going to ride this all the way down. So they pay, $20 for a 200 put and say, okay, well, if it keeps going, I'm good. And now all of a sudden you're $180 higher and you still are long these puts. No real reason to sell them, but you might have to do the two-saw and you might have to do stuff and maybe roll them up to the 400s or something. But I can see, because a stock like this has such massive, it has massive moves. So I think that could be part of the reason. The 50 level put people, who knows? The question is can Elon Musk do the dance for longer than he already has? And probably you're going to bet on somebody being able to do the dance. It would be him. I don't know if betting against him has been an expensive proposition, as I've noticed.
As you learn to your peril, sir. Yes, the man could dance. The one thing the man could do, he could dance for the cameras, and it seems to be working out for him and for the shareholders out there. And even if you're buying puts in stock, you're still a happy camper out here in Tesla land. Yeah, I'm with you, but I thought that as well. But then, the fact that these things keep printing is a little bit odd, shall we say. Let's move up to, if you are buying the stock near 400, is it 50 puts really what you're looking for your hedge? We'll leave that conversation. You guys have weighed in a lot. Weigh in for some more if you like. We're going to move on to what the hot stuff was lighting it up today. Number one with a bullet out here today for us on the old site when we were scanning it up was in Visa. Good old Visa, ticker symbol V. Not the old awesome miniseries from the 80s, no, or the somewhat lackluster remake a decade or so later. No, just Visa, ticker symbol V, 104.83 is where it closed today, off nearly 0.5%. This is the name that does about 30,000 contracts a day. Today doing over 4x that, over 120,000 going up here today. Nearly 7-to-1 calls over puts. And pretty much the reason why it's all call heavy was this massive vertical went up out here in Visa in the Jan 2018 110 120 vertical is what caught our eye out here. Paper just printing that offer, lifting the offer on that bad boy, doing it for 50,000 times, lifting the offer on the 110s. Back that train up. They hit the bid on the 110s. They lifted the offer on the 120s. Hence, they would be selling the spread, doing that for $2.35 on the 110s and 41 cents on the 120s. Again, big block, 50,000 printing. OI on both strikes is pretty substantial, over 60,000. So there is a potential for someone deciding perhaps discretion, the better part of valor here today, and taking this bad boy off the books. The OI has been around for a while. It's been around for over 2 months. That's as far back as our near-term OI scans go. So we didn't see anything beyond that. So we'll see. So at least 2 months this thing's been around. Interesting timing. If it is indeed closing, the stock's been on a bit of a run over the past 6 months or year or so, but not a crazy cakes run where you say to myself, oh my God, I got to take off this vertical, let alone a vertical that's still, 5 handles out of the money. Usually you need a nice aggressive pop to really make something like this kind of pay off, which raises the question opening, or perhaps just a little bit more on the old piling on. If they liked it before, they really got to like it now. That would also be odd because we're at a much higher level these days, but a little bit weird. Pretty much either way, which is what makes it fun for the odd block, Mr. Rock Lobster. What is your spidey sense, your lobster sense tell you on this one? You think they're piling in? You think they're getting the heck out of Dodge? What are you feeling? This would be the moment where you unmute yourself to express your thoughts.
I would like to. I thought I'm trying to be so quiet in the background here. I want to feel like they are getting out of this thing. I mean, it's kind of a tough one because I'm just looking at, there has been some volume. It looks like somebody was writing calls too at some point in July. So, but they were doing the par 20. So not quite sure. It's as but if you buy the 10-20 call spread and this thing's trading 104 and then you're hitting the bricks, I guess they made enough money in the spread. That's the only thing I can think of. But there was some action that was selling call spreads, even into July. But that was actually a pretty aggressive at the money call spread. So it's a little bit. I have to say it's a little bit of it's a little. I have to say I'm a little confused on this particular volume. Although I get the feeling that that's probably a close and they're just taking some money. But that would be the spidey sense would tell me that first.
That is kind of what your first inclination would probably be looking at this one, even though either way, it is a little odd. That's why it got included in the old odd block. If you buy it out for Jan, you probably made some decent money on it, but maybe not the pop that you probably were hoping for, but perhaps enough to ferret it out. We'll have to go ferret out exactly when this bad boy was opened again. Our initial scans only go back to July, so we have to go back a little bit farther manually. It takes a little bit more time. don't have time to do it right before the show starts. We'll do that a little bit later. Maybe figure out exactly what they opened this bad boy for. But interesting stuff here. And if they close it out, interesting if they're piling on. Also kind of weird because the level's not perhaps where you'd want to be piling into a 110, 120 here. So interesting stuff. Either way, sizable, interesting, and kind of bizarre. Speaking of sizable and bizarre, let's move on to our old friend TMUS. TMUS, of course, T-Mobile US, closing today $61.80, up 1% on the old day. This is the name that does about 11,000 contracts a day, doing nearly 70,000 today. And I guess Mr. Rock Lobster, just like the bat signal went up that somebody needed to get themselves some long deltas, some calls here in TMUS, and they had to do a lot of it in OC, some of it in NOV, but they had to just get themselves some calls, and so they did, to the tune of starting off with 20,000 of the OC 67 and a half. The strikes out here are weird, by the way, listeners. Must have been some funky action going on here because there's all kinds of weird strikes that they're just strikes that are kind of just coming on board and opening now. Half strikes everywhere, so it's a little bit of a weird kind of palooza out here on the strike side. But 67 halves printing 20,000 times here today for 32 cents, right up mid-market. Open interest only about less than 3,000, so clearly opening size going up there. OC 70s also playing ball, 10,000 of those. That's the only one where it's questionable whether it's opening or not because there's 45,000 already open in there. Those coming in for 30 cents paper, pretty much lifting the offer on those. The NOV 70s also printing right in the middle there, 60 cents, 10,000 times. OI 16,000, so there's potential closing there. And the 67s also lighting it up, nearly 2,000 contracts about on splits for nearly 32 cents. OI a whopping zero there. So it does look like someone has the whiff of getting themselves, get thee to some long deltas in TMUS. Of course, there is OI on a couple of these strikes, so it is potential for some closing, even though it would be interesting. And the prints, some of these prints are a little bit suspect as well. But still, just a call palooza here in TMUS, so much so that it came on our radar today. Hence, we share it with you. Let's go back and look at the year that has been out here in good old TMUS. I just like saying TMUS. It's closing. It opened the year here about a year ago. It was trading right around the 45 handle, so it's been a good range, about 16, nearly 17 bucks up here. A good run here for TMUS over the past year. It topped out at about 68. Back in early June. So right at the beginning of summer, this thing was trading 68. It's kind of been drifting a wee bit lower ever since. So perhaps if this is indeed all open and upside paper, as it appears to be, then perhaps someone just saying, I got to get myself some deltas here, and I want to do it in OC, and I want this thing to head north and to do so with some vim and some vigor. Mr. Rock Lobster, what say you here? First off, before you chime in, make sure you hit that big red button that says mute so you unmute yourself. And then secondly, what say you, sir, about this call party, call palooza, call you what you will here in T-Mobile US Inc., a.k.a. TMUS?
It's funny because I looked at it right before you said that. I go, I better look at that mute button. Why would you buy the 67.5 calls in T-Mobile? It's not, I understand the stock's been going up, and I think the whole cellular group is way undervalued, but hey, that's just, because you think of where are all those chips and everything going to go? All those self-driving cars and all those chips and everything's going to be networked and blah, infinite demand for bandwidth at some point. But anyway, I own a few of those anyway. But the idea of this one is, don't you find buying, I could see maybe closing some of the 70s, but that's actually a bid for those options. There's inverse skew in October. Are somebody buying T-Mobile? It looks like that SoftBank guy's made so much money on some of his other stuff. Maybe he's shopping for a new mobile carrier again. I know T-Mobile's always kind of one of those potential takeover targets and stuff like that. But you don't see a lot of inverse skew. And this one in particular actually is not a cheap company. So it's a bit of a head scratcher, I have to say, on this one, with all that volume and why they're buying such out of the money options in this. So I find it somebody's a little delta hoggy, and it's quite curious to me. I mean, if you're a liquidity provider, how many of the 70s you buying in October, Mark? I mean, are you buying those calls for any price? You're paying more for the 70s than you are for, the 62s.
I'm taking them all, baby. I'm taking them all the delta. I gotta get deltas. I just gotta get deltas, Mr. Rock Lobster. I'm not picky. The strikes out here are weird to begin with, so let's just take what we can get. I gotta trade 70s. All right, same price. Who cares, right? It's all deltas.
You look at it like the 62.5 70 call spread. You can buy that for $1.40. Doesn't seem like very much for October, but hey, what do I know? I just look at the volatilities and spin my little web. So, but anyway, that I think there's definitely somebody hogging some. There could be some closing. I don't know if there's any kind of funk in there, but it is a scratcher for somebody to have that kind of an interest, and therefore even to be a 32 volatility bid for calls that far out of the money. That just 32 volatility bid in a 17 vol stock is somebody somewhere wants something. That's all I got to say. And I think I'd probably go after the call spreads, the long call spreads on this one. If I were to be some sort of, betting guy on this one.
Does have that air to it. And speaking of things that have the air about them, it's Monday, so it has the air about some mail block time. Let's answer some questions. Let's dive right into the mail block.
It's time to take your seat on the All-Star panel as we read your emails, tweets, Facebook messages, website comments, and much more. It's time for the Mail Block.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Mail Block. Monday means it's time for the inmates to run the asylum. You guys take the reins, questions, comments, insights, pearls of wisdom. We love them all. Slams against the Rock Lobster. Yeah, we'll take a couple of those too. Why not? Hit us up. You know how to do it. Social media, on the website, the feedback form, in the app, via email, and of course, if you're tuning in live, you could fire them off in there as well. Let's start off paying off some questions we've asked you guys previously. We asked you guys last week. You say, hey, Harvey was first, then it was Irma, then it was Jose. Now there's, I think, Maria floating out there. We prep our houses and our cars and our families for disasters. How do you guys prep your portfolios? Give you 4 choices. We said get long some vol, could be VIX, VXX. We don't care. Pick your poison. Go to cash or T-bills, buying index or stock puts on the names you're long, or just getting into the old risk assets. And it was a pretty close split at the end. Getting long some VIX seemed to trump it, 31%. Just sneaking it in there, followed by a tie for number 2 with buying index or stock puts, and also buying the risk assets like gold. And 15% only saying they want to go to cash. So interesting stuff there. This week we asked you a little more timely stuff. We said, hey, these execs over there at Equifax kind of cashing out options worth nearly $600,000 about a month before the breach. The stock's now off about 35%. Do you think that's well timed? Are they lucky? Is it illegal? Or are you guys busy? Too busy really freezing your accounts to worry about this kind of stuff. Let's start off with Mr. Mobile here, a.k.a. Uncle Mike. What are you feeling, sir, and what do you think our audience is feeling?
I think that it's very well timed. I think that something's up, meaning that I think they're a bunch of cheats, and I think the audience feels the same way.
You think our audience is deeply cynical like you, sir? Is that what you're saying? Is that what you're saying to me here?
In this instance, I think they are. Throw the bums in jail.
Interesting. Mr. Rock Lobster, does your diehard Mainerness in you, does that also breed a certain libertarian cynicism into this one that you think is reflected by our audience?
Yeah, I'm one of these. I'm not very happy about this. So I think it's total crap. And what's weird with these executives is $500,000 is not going to be a life changer for the CEO of a major company.
Yeah, so but it's enough to land you in jail.
Well, the problem is that it will change your life because you could end up with 2 years in jail or something. But it's not going to change your life by raising $500,000 worth of stock. Like, oh wow, okay, I'm going to buy a new boat or something. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah,
so
you see it all the time. Doesn't that happen with Martha Stewart?
Optics.
Wasn't that Martha Stewart? Didn't she do her whole thing for like $50,000 worth of savings in the stock? And it pretty much ruined her life for years to come.
Yeah, I mean, what was it? It's like it was that drug company. I can't even remember.
Was it Genentech? I think it was Genentech. One of those ones. Something like that.
It was something techie like that, or biotechy, I remember. But exactly though. That one is a little bit of a surpriser to me. So
yeah, these guys have now single-handedly raised their hands and said, "Hey, make us the scapegoats for this horrible security breach because we seem to have profited on it." So there you go. Now they've pretty much, if this is indeed well-timed info, and it sounds like our audience shares your cynicism, nearly 70% saying they acted on inside info, 13% saying the guy just got lucky, 10% saying he's a genius, he's a market timing genius, and 9% saying you're too busy freezing your accounts to worry about this stuff. You got about a week left. A lot of people are already piling in. It's only been up for, pretty much showtime. That's about it. So people are already weighing in. Do so if you haven't done so already. Let us know your thoughts on this dubious business. Corey Groshek chiming in says, it's about time. These guys are talking when we tweeted earlier about the stock sales are the focus of a criminal probe by the SEC now. So this is an official insider trading probe by the SEC and by the DOJ. And Corey Groshek saying about time. So people seem like they really want a perp walk on this one. And I'm guessing maybe these guys may have just volunteered to be the ones. All right, next up here we got this coming in from the live here. This is Catherine Corby. She says, I think she's talking about the Tesla puts we were talking about earlier, Mr. Rock Lobster, the crazy, all the top 5 being Jan, way out of the money puts. She says here, how do you guys know that the put buyer is not selling near the money puts at the same time? That would be smart. Maybe the 50 puts just reduce the margin. Wouldn't the near the money puts just get submerged in normal daily trading volume? Well, you're right. Obviously, if they are doing this, even if they are doing it 1-to-1, so if it's straight up put spread, because these 50 puts trade 200-300, sometimes more contracts a day. The thousands printed 1,500, or the hundreds printed 1,500 the other day. So they do print in decent size. If they were doing corresponding size near the money, Tesla doesn't trade that much where it wouldn't come up on people's radar, and we would see it probably go up as spreads. So if they're doing it as a spread, we would see it labeled as such. I get to see any of these real prints. Once I think I saw them with the 50s and the pars labeled as spreads. It seems like pretty much it's just outrights. It's outrights coming in and buying 50, 25, 75, 100, 200, 300 of these 50 puts, and all the other ones pretty much for side. They could be legging. I'm not going to say it's impossible. They could certainly be legging. They think it'd be odd, but they could be also on the margin side. I don't think the 50 puts are really going to do much for you. If you're selling, let's say you want near out of the money, so you say that you're selling front month 375 puts or 2 month out 375 puts in Tesla, and you're buying 50 puts to reduce your margin, you still got a heck of a lot of chunk of change in the middle there that you're going to have to put the margin outlay for. So your broker isn't going to exactly cut you a freebie because you're buying the 50 puts. But that said, there could be some spreading. I think we're spreading between the pars, so the 100s and the 50s. I think there's more action going on there, probably some ratios. I think we've seen some ratios going up of the pars versus 1x2 and things on the 50s. But otherwise, the 50s in particular, the top one, is just weird. It's just a lot of paper every day, small chunks, day in, day out, not labeled spread, so not really indicative of spreading activity. I don't know, Mr. Rock Lobster, what do you say? Are you buying lots of space in that spread? Yes, you are correct, sir. Are you buying what Miss Corby here is selling, that it's being disguised by at-the-money put action as well?
Yeah, like we used to say back in the floor trade, there's a lot of space in that spread. Where, yeah, it helps with margin, but probably won't help with not losing a bunch of money. I think a lot of this, like I said, a lot of this put buying is probably tied to equity purchases. So in that case, he's probably right. It's a spread, because you could, most of the time you've just wasted all your money buying puts in Tesla. So I could see it from that point of view. We have not seen a lot of block spreads go up in Tesla very often, to be honest. So, she could be right. I don't think we've just seen that kind of volume. Because just the volatility in Tesla, I have not seen it lend itself to that kind of volume. But that doesn't mean it can't happen somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, Tesla, for all the headlines it gets and all the action we talk about, people obviously talk about it every day, it's not perhaps as active as you might assume. In fact, we break it down in our Tesla tracker every day. There's less than less than 1 million contracts open in total open interest. So, I mean, the number one position is only 29,000 contracts. And that's these weird out of the money 50 puts. So 400 lots, they'd get noticed. It's not like we're talking VIX where it's printing, 1 million contracts a day and the open interest is 14 million. That's a different beast. It's active, clearly. It does well, but it's not, so active where, 400 lot spreads would go unnoticed, shall we say. But good question. We've seen a lot of theories going up about these weird puts. Yours is as valid or invalid, perhaps, as any others that we've seen out there. So keep those theories coming. We like them. Here's one from our old friend Richard D. He's written in again. He says, Dear derivative dignitaries. I like that. He says, it's your longtime listener, Richard D. again. I couldn't write over the last few weeks because I did not have a new appropriate salutation for you. Well done, Mr. Richard. You've come up with a good one. I like that. Derivatives dignitaries. We go with All-Star panel. Derivatives dignitaries. We'll take it whatever you want to spin our way. He goes on to write, I have recently been looking at some Apple calendars. So put on your listening ears, Uncle Mike. This is right up your alley. I'll see, for example, that I can get near-term Apple calendars near the strike using puts for about 5% less than the calls. For example, recently with the equity price around 161, and Apple today is closing right around 158.70 or so not too far away from where he was talking. He says with the equity price of 161 along 162.5 SEP 2229 call calendar would go for about, so he means not strikes obviously, but week expiring on the 22nd and expiring on the 29th, would go for about 62 cents, while the puts are about 59 cents. Aren't these supposed to be the same? And since they are not, can you arb this? Especially if you do not have commission charges. Thanks, and I appreciate the wealth of knowledge and laughs I get from your show. Regards, Richard. Well, you're welcome for the laughs, sir. We do our best. I got to work with what I got here. I got the Rock Lops and Uncle Mike, but I'm trying to do our darndest to put a little smile on your face every week, sometimes twice a week. But that said, interesting stuff. I know you used to sling a lot of calendars out here in Apple, Uncle Mike. Probably less so these days. I think you're doing more straight up puts and things like that if you are doing much out here. But what say you about his supposition that you can arb 3 cents out of these puts versus call calendars here in Apple, as well as if you have any thoughts about trading calendars on Apple these days, have at it, sir.
Well, a couple thoughts on this. First off, you said it was the 162.5 was the strike for both of them.
That was, he wants the 162.5 September expiring the 22nd and expiring the 29th, so a 1 week calendar there.
Got it. I mean, it's very possible that there is a small little difference in there, especially if there's a lot of Apple zealots out there, as you like to call them, for people just wanting to buy calls and have it to because it's going to continue to go up forever and ever and ever. So that is very possible. And it would be possible to arb, but you're not going to make a ton of money on it. Just to kind of add to that, this morning when I was selling some puts for the triple income, ticker symbol BR, you were actually able to, it would have been roughly a 20 to 30 cent advantage to trade the covered call over selling the put at the same strike price. That doesn't really happen very often. And then by the time I actually did it, it was gone. But you do see that from time to time, and you typically don't see it last. Like this morning, it did not last very long. So it's possible you could arb it. The other thing to think about, though, is for assignment. If there is a dividend coming up in Apple and you're short a call in Apple, and I don't know what the Apple dividend schedule is off the top of my head, you need to be aware that you might be assigned early because someone wants to collect that dividend if Apple were to go in the money, and you could end up being short Apple when you're not expecting to be short Apple and end up paying a dividend and then bye-bye arb advantage. So that's probably one thing to consider. Once again, I don't know when Apple's next dividend payment is scheduled to be, but that's another thing to consider whenever doing any short call strategy of any kind, quite honestly. So it could be possible. I have not looked at it or researched it enough, but that is my take on it.
Mr. Rock Lobster, a lot here to unpack here. Of course, Arbin for 3 cents. I like that notion. If you got no commission costs, I suppose it is possible. But they walk our friend, Mr. Uncle Mike kind of touched on it. Of course, the puts and the versus the calls, a little bit of that extra juice that goes in there for things like early assignment. And also, if you're doing a call calendar and a put calendar 1 week out, what the heck are you actually doing, Mr. Rock Lobster? What would you call such a thing?
Well, yes, it's a roll.
Yes.
We would call it, if you bought the call calendar and sold the put calendar, same strikes, that would be a jelly roll. That would get you long the synthetic in the 29 cycle and short the synthetic in the 22nd. With the divvy in November, the November divvy does not affect the September options at all. So you would make 3 cents. After you have to deal with your short combination coming off in the SEP 22 cycle. Also, partially too, the 62.5 calls are slightly out of the money with the stock trading where it is. So the market might be a little bit, wider on those calls. Maybe it could be just a simple thing of markets. I think the liquidity provider way you could probably arb it. I do not think, as a retail customer, they're going to let you just take 3 cents out of there a few thousand times and walk away. So I'm thinking that maybe if you looked at these are closing marks or something like that, that aren't quite where things are trading.
Wouldn't it be a nice world, though, if that was the world we lived in, where retail could just come in, just scam off 3 cents and just thousands of times, completely frictionless? How great would that be?
Well, I mean, the old days, remember the raised bandits where they would arb the 2 exchanges?
Oh, I remember them well. I ended up wearing many hundred delta calls against my face many times. Oh, I sold these deep in the money calls that are 100 delta 50 times, about a buck lower than where the stock is. Oh, great. That's a good way to start my day.
My favorite was just them posting a bid that was, a quarter through an offer, and just the bid wouldn't go away, and then the raised bandit people would just bling, 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 bling.
Yep, just lighten up their own thing. We'll have to talk to our friend, the Flow Master, Henry Schwartz. I think he was involved with some of those early dudes, I think, back in the day.
Surprises me not.
Such
about
fun
that guy
out there. So yeah, long answer to your question there, Mr. Richard. It is theoretically possible, but friction is going to be an issue. As Mr. Rock Lobster mentioned, you're going to have these synthetics on both legs, so taking them on and off, and preserving that 3 cents is going to be a challenge, and it's essentially a roll at the end of the day. So usually it's not. It's a lot of effort and a lot of work, and there is some exposure there to consider just to try to get your 3 cents. So while maybe that's the academics might say it's theoretically possible, practically speaking, it would be a challenge to preserve that 3 cents. All right, we got time for a quick one here. Sackman in the chat. Sackman12. I apologize. Sackman12, not Sackman. Sackman12 wants to know, what are the odds that SVXY gets back to 70? Oh, sounds like someone should be tuning in to Vol Views on Friday for all sorts of talk about SVXY and VIX and VXX and all the other VIX ETPs out there. That said, Mr. Rock Lobster, you were just talking SVXY at the top of the show. I know you like looking at this one. This is, of course, if you don't know, listeners, it is the VIX short-term futures ETF, closing today close to the 90 handle. So not a bad short VIX short-term futures ETF. Not a bad day, obviously, for this one. Mr. Rock Lobster, what say you? Back to 70 anytime soon for good old SVXY?
I know. I'm looking at my handy-dandy Volshok calculator, and if we got to, I'm cheating a little bit, if we got to, let's say, 14 even on the October future, we would be trading 80. So I would say for us to get back there, we would need to be probably the 15 handle on the October future. So, we need the 15 handle. So you would need the VIX futures to go up about $2.70 to get back to a 70 SVXY. So 15 vol in the future, that probably means VIX cash has to trade 16, 17, something like that. So, we need basically the North Korean thing, but go back to like the first launch of, not like the fifth launch that they've had or whatever. Or more Russia stuff that actually has teeth to it. All the stuff that was causing vol spikes over the summer and in the spring when we had them as short as they were. That's what you need. I think if anything, if it's sort of like if that the Fed thing makes people nervous and everybody decides to slowly run toward the exit, you could see that. Right now, it's not there. Although, like I said earlier when we were talking with Mark and I were talking about where is the volatility. The volatility is in the VIX futures because they're keeping them. There's just, I don't think there's a lot of natural sellers at this level with VIX at 10. And there's pretty substantial premium in them. It's because nobody wants to sell them because of, I think that is one of the reasons. So SVXY can get to 70. With the current structure in the futures, you would need to see October solidly in the 15 handle, and then you will have your 70 SVXY. So you need VIX at 16 or 17 really for that to happen. Could happen.
Could happen. It'd be a little rich, but it certainly could happen. We all need to have a vol shock calendar in our back pocket just for rainy days and questions just like this. I know, Mr. Rock Lobster, you've been eyeing this SPX assignment question. I shall tease you for yet another week because we don't have time for it this week. So hold your horses on that one, maybe on Thursday. As we keep on rolling into our final segment, it is time for Around the Block.
It's time to tell you what we'll be watching on our trading screens until the next episode. It's time for Around the Block.
All right, everybody. Time for our final segment, like the man said, the portion of the show where we tell you what we're keeping an eye on, aside from our potentially inevitable VIX shocks getting up there to 15 and good old SVXY back to 70. Outside of that potential scenario, Mr. Uncle Mac, we'll start with you as you prepare to disembark from the mobile office there. What is catching your eye for the rest of the week, sir?
Well, I want to see if we hold 2,500. Want to see if SLV is a buying opportunity or the beginning of a major downturn. So definitely watching that. No particular company earnings or anything like that that we were watching, and just wanted to see just where not necessarily watching the VIX. I mean, obviously watching the VIX, but not necessarily watching it like the boys at the pit do, but just watching vol in general and seeing where it goes with us. With where we are, if we get an increase in volatility, I'd be curious to see if it's either a small one or a large one, and I'll be watching. Hence the reason, Around the Block.
Wasn't it on the show a couple months ago you had your great VIX awakening, and you were just going on at length about the impact of VIX and volatility on options? Wasn't that just a couple months ago?
Well, it was, and I'm still doing like risk reversal type stuff and still adjusting to it. And if we have a pretty big rally with this, there's going to be a whole lot of grinning going on, mostly by me.
The great vol awakening. Well, then, Mr. Rock Lobster, if Uncle Mike is having a great vol awakening, then you must be loving yourself some Apple and some silver. Is that what you're watching this week?
We definitely are looking at metals and treasuries too. It's one of those things where, okay, the gold's going down and treasuries are softening up a little bit because the Fed's selling, and you're looking at like, okay, now, well, how far are they really going to go? And that's usually, it's just sort of, remember when oil prices were dropping and everybody's like, oh, yeah, this is a bottom. And then, at 90, everybody was thinking that. And then it was 90, 85 and 80 and 75 and 70. And then all of a sudden, we got a problem, low oil prices, we got a problem, I guess. I mean, so that was enough to cause a little volatility in the equity markets, as I recall. So that is the kind of stuff, yes, we're looking at. Risk reversals in VIX, with VIX at 10, probably not a terrible idea, just pricing them out a little bit. It is, I mean, we could have a 10 VIX settlement, probably the lowest in a while for us. Certainly possible. So yes, but I think those are certainly ways to do it with how things are trading. So, but at the same time, you're almost everything you do in VIX is trading at a much higher handle than the actual cash. So, mid 12s for October, 13s for November, 14 for December. So, you put factor all that in when you're doing that stuff, because you do need a little bit of lift to make it work. But that being said, I think this year, every time we hit the 10 handle or the close to 9 handle, somehow we have something else happening very soon after that.
There you go, Mr. Rock Lobster. Well said. Risk reversals out in VIX land. I'm surprised you have time for such things. when you're so busy out there getting ready for your VIX, the 30-day iron, 10% out of the money iron condors that you're so fond of in the new fund you're about to launch. But unfortunately, that music means we're done. It's all the time we have. Before we go, really quickly, we check back in with my cohorts, my partners in crime, see what they're working on that may interest you. Well, let's start with he of no ticket charges. Mr. Uncle Mike, what's cooking in the land of RCM, sir?
Hey, if you want to work with a financial advisor who is not afraid of the word implied volatility, or if you have a large single stock position that you are interested in getting some income off of or hedging in some way, give me a call at 312-212-3531 or shoot me an email at mtosaw@rcmfs.com.
Give the man a call, listeners. He's just sitting there. He's just waiting for your call. He's just a very, very sad man. He needs some calls. So hit him up right in his day. And maybe you save yourself some ticket charges in the process. And also, I hear you guys over there in the pit, Mr. Lobster, have an event coming up next week or so. Fill us in, sir.
Yep, Pro Trading event, September 27th through the 29th. Lots of great speakers. Put some learning on. Mark will be hosting that in Chicago at the CBOE. And look for my Easy VIX class. We will be pricing it at a very competitive, lowest price ever, just trying to get people into the VIX so they understand how it is, see if they like it. That will be happening in early October. Easy VIX for you.
There you go. So next week for the Pro Trader Summit, I will be there. Mr. Uncle Mike will be there. So if you're going to be in Chicago, you want to get some SIBO time, want to get some learning in, check out some of the live shows we do there and all the other fun stuff. Check it out, optionpit.com. Link will also be in our show notes for registering. Be fun to see you if you're going to be out there in Chicago. Always a good time every year at the Pro Trader Summit. And on behalf of Uncle Mike and the Rock Lobster and indeed myself, I thank all of you out there in the listening audience for downloading, streaming, subscribing, and of course sending in such great questions. Keep them coming. We read them all. If you don't have a chance to answer them all on the show, don't worry. We read them all. We will try to respond to you in some way, shape, or form. So keep them coming, and we'll see you on Thursday for more of the Option Block.
The preceding program was a production of the Options Insider Radio Network. For more quality options programs, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app, available in iTunes and on Google Play. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.